Hi guys, I'm Shelley and it's time for my November wrap up. I read 8 books this month and 1 play, starting straight off with the first book I read, which was So Me by Graham Norton. This is his first autobiography. He's just had a second one out, which I also read this month. The first one follows him from birth to the start of his BBC One show. The second one, Confessions of a He-Devil, is broken up into sections of things he loves. So a chapter about his dogs, and he has a chapter about his love life, and a chapter about New York and all the places he's been. And it's very much like the first one. I think some passages were taken completely verbatim and just put in different order, basically. You could read the second one and not have to read the first one. He writes how he talks, which I find is rare in autobiography. Sometimes you're reading it, it's just like a diary. But this is basically like you're sat down talking to him and he's telling you. He has a very specific grasp of language, and that is put down into this book. Next it was Halloween, so I picked up The Prisoner of Azkaban. I love Sirius Black. I love the spookiness of this. Who doesn't love a bit of Potter? Next I picked up the Christmas book My True Love Gave to Me by loads of people. Holly Black, Ali Carter, Gail Foreman, Jenny Han, David Levithan, Kelly Link, Stephanie Perkins, Rainbow Rowell. This is a collection of short Christmas stories by all these people. It is beautiful, I have to say. That's the main reason why I bought it. Just look at how gorgeous it is. Pink tip. I was a little disappointed with it though. I found all the stories a bit meh. I read it really quickly, short stories, get through them fast, but I wasn't really it didn't give me that Christmassy feel that I kind of wanted. There's Christmas movies on the TV and I was kind of hoping it would be book form of that, but it wasn't. The only one I really enjoyed was Stephanie Perkins' story because it was about Christmas trees and I have a thing about Christmas trees. I'd love to know what other people thought of this book if they've read it and which one was their favourite short story. So if you have any thoughts on that, can you comment below? Because I'd love to know which story connected with which people the most. But I think I gave it like 2 or 3 stars. It's alright. Next I read on ebook Stay With Me by Jaylyn, which is the 3rd in the Wait For You series she's done. I've loved this series. I loved the first one, I loved the second one, and then I read Stay With Me and okay. It follows Calla, who is 21, she is in college, she's just found out that her tuition money has disappeared, so she has to go home and find out where it went. So she goes home and finds that her mum is missing and a whole lot of trouble is about to hit her in the head. She bumps into this guy named Jax, who is there to save the day and is her big white knight. And that's kind of how all 3 books are. There is some kind of peril and then there is a white knight to save the day. In all the other books, the men have never been that pushy. When it comes to physical relationships, they've always stepped back. With this book, it's completely turned on its head. Jax is supposed to be this lovely white knight. He's saying, I'm not going to push you. I'm a perfect gentleman, really. You don't have any trouble with me. I was really uncomfortable reading these scenes where Jax is pressuring Calla. She is also physically holding herself back and clenching up, and he's just carrying on and thinking this is fine, and it's written like this is fine, and I have a really big problem with this. I love Jaylyn's writing. I've loved the other 2. I don't know what happened. I really don't, but I got about halfway through, got to this scene that got very close to rape, and there have been other pressure scenes before, and then that was it. I'm sorry, I had to drop the book. I'm hoping this is a one-off and it won't happen again. Next on audiobook I listened to Will Grayson by John Green and David Levithan. I now have a copy. Listening to it was confusing because I had completely forgotten what this was going to be about, so I'd forgotten that there were 2 Will Graysons. So listening to it in audiobook, I just assumed there was one, and he was having some kind of mental breakdown where suddenly he had 2 parents and then 1 parent, and then all very confusion. But it turns out halfway through the book I realised that it's actually 2 people. I really enjoyed this book. I loved the writing. I can sort of tell which one was David Levithan and which one was John Green, because John writes about one Will and David writes about the other. I found a lot of crossover with The Fault in Our Stars in this book. A lot of the language, so I'm guessing John's parts, crossed over. A lot of the stories crossed over. There is a swing set that is heavily in this book, and you just think of the swing set in The Fault in Our Stars. I think that John Green kind of keeps writing the same book over and over again, but I still really enjoyed it. I'm really getting into David Levithan's writing. I look forward to actually reading this, physically reading it, and see if it makes more sense to me. Next from the library I've got Geek Girl by Holly Smale. This follows a young girl named Harriet who is a confessed geek. She is in high school, so I think she's about 15, 16. And she loves all things maths and all things science, and she has a best friend who loves fashion. And they go on a school trip to the clothes show Live. Harriet gets scouted as a model, and This is her best friend's dream. This is what her best friend wants more than anything in the world, and it's Harriet's who's been picked. Then it follows Harriet as she is thrust into the world of fashion and top modelling, and it's a bit like America's Top Model, only with a girl who actually doesn't want it. I found this really good. There was an anti-bullying readathon this month, and I kind of wish I'd read it for that, because there is a lot of kind of pressure and bullying upon Harriet, who has been thrust into this world, one, she doesn't want to be in, two, her best friend isn't talking to her because she's living her best friend's dream and her best friend is kind of annoyed with her. It was a really fast and enjoyable read. The humour was very good. It kind of reminded me of The Princess Diaries a little bit, just with modelling. Next, I carried on my David Levithan-a-thon, if that's a thing, and read Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist by David Levithan and Rachel Cohen. It follows Nick and Nora on a mad night in New York. It's sort of like a road trip book, only instead of going cross country, they go across New York in one night. I could love this book all on its own just for the fact that it quotes My So-Called Life in it. It references it, it says that whoever took it off air is an evil, evil person, and they are so right, because I love the 90s TV series My So-Called Life. It is in my heart, and so this book is now in my heart for referencing it. I'm really loving David Levithan's writing. And next we come to The Strange and Beautiful Sorrows of Ava Lavender by Leslie Walton. I don't know how to describe this book. I don't know if you can describe this book. It follows Ava Lavender, who is born with wings. She's not an angel, she's not a bird, she just is born with wings. To find out how these wings became part of her, you follow her family saga, and it turns out that all the women and some of the men in her family have something magical about them or mystical about them. You have love stories and adventure stories and a family tree story. Yeah. I still haven't found the words how to describe this, except for I don't think you can unless you read it, but it is a very, very good read. I will be recommending it to as many people as I possibly can. And the last thing I didn't actually read, I listened to, and that was 6 Degrees of Assassination by M.J. Aldridge. This was a play commissioned by Audible. I'm not sure if the deal is still up, but for a while it was free on Audible, so I'll put a link below if the deal still works. It stars Andrew Scott of Sherlock Moriarty fame and Freema Agyeman of Martha fame from Doctor Who. It's a story about the assassination of the UK Prime Minister and how MI5 deal with it. And it's very, very good. It's very kind of twisty, turny. If you've ever watched Spooks in the UK, it's basically an audiobook version of Spooks. Some of the plot twists are a bit obvious and you see them coming, but at the same time it's really, really enjoyable. You have Andrew Scott's voice, who just, who doesn't love that man's voice? He's just gorgeous. I really loved it. I don't usually go for kind of thrillers, but it was fast-paced and enjoyable. And that's it. That's all 9 books. I can't remember. I think it was 8 books and 1 play. I thought I was having a quiet month because I wasn't doing very well, but I think Audible and audiobooks got me through quite a lot of it. I really enjoyed listening to Will Grayson kind of half asleep, which is probably why I didn't understand most of it. If you've read any of these books or you want to talk about any of these books, hit me up down below, especially if you want to talk about My True Love Gave to Me. I'd still love to know which short story you love the most. And I hope you guys are good, and I'll see you next time. Bye!